Hello everyone, welcome to the Alastair Greener Generationally Speaking podcast, where we look at bridging the generation gap. We're going to be debunking myths, we're going to be talking stereotypes, and we're going to be showing practical tips on how we can build stronger intergenerational connections. And today I'm talking to probably my youngest guest that I've had on so far, because he also defies many of the characteristics associated with this generation. We'll get to that in a moment. He's a Zennial, born on the cusp of millennials and Gen Z. He bought his first property at just 18 years old. Today, at 29, he oversees a £20 million development portfolio. It's across Wiltshire, Bristol, and his journey, though, isn't just about accumulating properties. It's about transforming entire cities. Wow, there's a mission. Arthur, welcome.
Hi. Yes, I don't know what it is, but I'm not. Sole focus is to regenerate Swindon and make it somewhere really enjoyable for people to live.
And anybody who's been to Swindon will say you've got a job on your hands.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's come to that in a moment, because just before we started recording, we were discussing, are you a millennial? Are you a Gen Z? Where reality is, you don't mind telling me the year you were born, that the fact that Gen Z starts at 1997 and you were just a little bit before that. But what it means as a cusper, you will have traits of both generations. I mean, it's not a strict line that, right, you suddenly become that generation because you were born a day later than somebody else. But if you compared yourself to other people that you know of your age, maybe people you went to school with, just people you know, and the stereotype that people look at you and think, how do you reckon you measure up?
So I'm kind of going through the mix of employing people my age at the moment, and I think the work ethic that people my age don't necessarily have. I have for a long time strived to want more, and with that comes my dedication to working hard and being quite competitive, whereas I don't feel that is quite what my generation like the traits they have.
Where do you think that came from? Because at the end of the day, you were born in, apparently you're all born the same generation, you're all the same, so why are you so different?
I would say it's to do with my upbringing. I have an older father who his first children are old enough to be my parents. So I grew up with probably somebody that was a lot wiser, had a lot more life experience, and when I was growing up, the sole focus of what my father was, what the conversations in the house was, how the hell is he going to retire? So whereas maybe people my age, their parents are 20, 25 years above them, they're going through kind of career changes and establishing kind of their initial wealth, whereas my father was slowing down.
And those are the
So
conversations you were having around the dinner tables and things like that. So that was clearly affecting the way you felt.
yes, because my father worked for himself for such a long time, and the big thing was, well, my pension won't last me till I'm older. So the conversations in the household were, well, if I buy a hotel, would we be able to run it? And it's like, no. So I was kind of exposed to probably a bit more than what a traditional family had. And also, my brother is quite heavily autistic. So I kind of, within my upbringing, had a kind of carer's role involved in my childhood, because we were very protective of him and we wanted to make sure he had a very secure life.
So you had this immediate sense of responsibility at probably a younger age than most people would have.
Yes, yeah.
When did you start seeing any form of, or when did you notice that maybe your thinking was different to your fellow students at school, or whenever it was that you suddenly thought, hang on a second, I'm thinking a bit differently to them?
I've always had a big drive to make money. So for me, me and my friend Joe, we started off a chicken business where we would sell eggs and would hatch the chickens to sell to people at school, and that was probably at the age of 8 and 9. I managed to twist my parents' arm to send me to a business school at 11 during the summer. And that was quite fun. That allowed me to kind of present to large names within the UK business scene. And it exposed me to what the drive that I wanted to be a business leader rather than working for someone.
What kind of reaction did you get from people? Because, you are definitely an outlier at your age, doing what you were doing and being so focused on business. Did you was the feeling more accepting, or was it, go away and come back when you've grown up?
It was the latter comment. So I have a big, one of the drivers, I think, for me has been when people say no, or you can't do that, or come back later. There's a big kind of rocket that goes through my body and tells me to just beat them and show them otherwise.
So, and again, do you think that was instilled from your parents, or is it just something that's just in you?
I think that's more in me. I don't like when people say no or it's not accomplishable, because if you put your mind to it, work hard, then you can achieve what you want to achieve.
What do you say to people your age who clearly, from what you said earlier on, many of whom have a very different attitude to business and things like that? How do your conversations go with them?
I have to be very mindful of how far you push, people, my peers and my friends, because I really don't. Some people will say, oh, this is a barrier, whereas I don't see that as a barrier, but that might be because I have worked through that barrier and I can offer some advice. But there's only so much I can offer before it's just a kind of mental block that they hold.
And do you think is it something that when you talk to people, do you feel you've got something in common with them? Or do you feel very different to them and therefore, well, just crack on, I'm going to do what I do anyway? What's going through your mind when you're having conversations with people your age group who do very different things to you?
I have such a kind of variety of friends where people my age group are either in the corporate world and doing very well and they're climbing that ladder, but they're very stuck and there's no kind of freedom and they've got long hours. And for me, I admire their tenacity and their work ethic, and that is instilled in them. However, their perception of life is very different to mine. I don't want to work. I work hard and I have what I have because I have worked hard, but I also know there's an end to that. Whereas for them, they've got another 30, 40 years in that industry. And then, I have friends who are, work is, they live month by month, and that's hard to resonate with. Although, sometimes I do live month by month because of the developments that I've got going on, but I'm not going to shy away from that. But the conversations, I guess, that I have with those are, I can't relate to their situation.
Yeah. Talking of relating to people, that's something that different generations, have always potentially struggled with, haven't they? Having a much older parent will have, I'm sure, bridged that a little bit. How do you approach, let's say you're starting a new project and you're surrounded by people of different generations, they're very different to you, they don't know you, they don't know what drives you and things like that. How do you broach those conversations so that you can get up to speed fairly quickly?
What, with my generation or with...
No, just anybody that you get to work with. I'm thinking particularly, when it comes to maybe financiers or people that you're looking for, investors and things like that. They don't know you, but you've got to somehow communicate and get through to them so that they trust and have faith in your project.
So for me, it's all about the deal and the numbers and how you can kind of safeguard their money and also what's the exit. And I think if you're clear on those three things, there's not that much that they can question. And from my experience, I've got very delivered projects. I have experience. I have a asset base behind me, so I'm not going in with no experience. But that does come with time. And I guess at the beginning, I had to. I guess at the beginning, where I wasn't using so much my experience, it was more my time that I was giving up, because I was, self-managing, and I was putting in the time to deliver those projects. Whereas now it's my experience leads those kind of conversations and those investment opportunities.
Tell me about that first conversation you must have had when you first went to the bank and said, right, I've got this idea, or, other investors. So you're quite right. You've now got that level of experience, so you can easily draw upon that. But getting that in the first place is tougher. So tell me about those first conversations.
Well, the banks, because of my age, were set, the minimum lending criteria was 25, and I was going to them at 21, 22. So it was there was a big hard block. And for me, my driver is to prove people wrong. So I found the money elsewhere, and that was either done privately, or I'd go to a challenger bank who would maybe kind of make an exception for me with my age.
Do you go to schools and colleges and things like that and talk to younger people? Because I can imagine a lot of people would see you as such a great inspiration to young people. What kind of reaction do you get?
I did a talk recently, but I didn't kind of push myself out as this person who is really challenging and changing the roles. I kind of spoke about how I'm looking to kind of slow down and retire, and I'm only 30 and I want to. So it wasn't particularly inspiring in that sense, but I get invited to talk.
And so what about younger people when they look at you? Because they won't be seeing other people like you very often.
I think the generation now are very driven by what you see in the 10 seconds you see on Instagram. So for them, it is having a flash car, it is having a big house, it is having, the latest iPhone, the latest Apple products. So at the moment, I see that generation very driven by the products that they can and the brands that they can wear. So helping them maybe see the value of their time in building a business that can eventually get them that is sometimes a bit challenging, because I've never really been driven by. I say that now, but I have a big house now. But I was never really driven by the fast cars and the big house.
You talked earlier on about the work ethic and how that differentiates between you and people of your age and maybe a little bit younger. And there's certainly, if we went down that stereotypical route, employers will say things like, well, I just can't connect with them. I can't get them to work. What do you say to those kind of employers and those people who can't get Gen Z to work? Or they claim they can't get them to work?
I think there are lots of people in the world that are looking for work. And if you can't get them to work, then you find somebody else.
So I love the simplicity of your answer.
I think, we are now in a world where our competition is, Asia, is countries that have now developed a good education system and are teaching all these people to do the work that us Brits can do. So now there's this kind of transitional period where we can go out to those nations, pay a lot less money. There's a lot different work ethic to our generation here in the UK. And I think there is going to be this period of us, my generation particularly, where they are, because they're choosing not to work, they are not going to have the work and they're not going to have the jobs. So then that leads to a social problem maybe towards when they're 60, 70, because they won't have afforded to buy a house. Their families would have spent all their money on their care, so they wouldn't have inherited any money. And then there's going to be this huge black hole of people not having anything.
I want to go back to when you were at school, because I can imagine you and your mate there at 8, 9 years old selling eggs and doing all that kind of. Were you encouraged, or was it very self-driven as far as the school was concerned? You know, when you got home and you were talking to your parents about your mates at school, but also the teachers at school, where did that all connect, or was it a bit disconnected that it felt very alien?
I don't remember there being any barriers. I think I wasn't particularly academic at school, and I think they tried to make me be more focused on kind of reading and writing, and I wasn't particularly interested at that point. But I just wanted to be outside and having fun, whereas and selling things. I wasn't. But then I was really good at maths, and I wasn't driven to get good marks. But I think with my parents, and I do look back, and I'm not going to raise my children like this, my parents were very laissez-faire with how they treated school. So there wasn't a big emphasis on me getting good grades. It was more, when I was a teenager, I was supposed to be revising, but I would sleep in the day because I was just exhausted. And my parents' attitude was, well, you are growing up and you've got to sleep. Whereas I'm not going to raise my children like that, because I would want them to try and attain the most they can out of school, because it's just such an informative few years that you don't get.
So how much of that is you just going against your parents because that's what young people do? And because at the end of the day, if your children end up like you, they have that same kind of sort of entrepreneurial flair that you do, it's worked for you, why wouldn't it work for them?
It will definitely work for them. I hope. I don't know, but I just think if my parents were more focused on my academic skills, I would have maybe. I don't know. I've rebelled, so I don't know what would have happened. But
I think I love your honesty there about the fact that that's what happens. People rebel and they do something, and it manifests itself in different ways. What about now? In terms of fun time, holidays, stuff like that. You're clearly very driven. You're very focused towards your work. And we live in a society where Instagrammable holidays, we talked about not being particularly motivated by cars. But, do you think that your life, you're having that level of enjoyment that maybe other people are around you who are out there growing with their experiences and traveling and doing all sorts of stuff that I suspect you probably don't have time for?
Yeah, I'm going through the kind of transitional period at the moment. I think I've worked for 11 years now, where I have sacrificed relationships, I have sacrificed travel, I have sacrificed having hobbies. So now I am, I meet loads of people at the moment, and they're like, "What do you do in your free time?" And my free time is I work. So, and now trying to change those habits is also difficult. So I am getting hobbies. I am establishing what I want to achieve in my personal life rather than, all work. But then I don't feel like I think people of my generation are having fun in their 20s. I would say I worked in my 20s.
And, obviously I talk a lot about generational communication and seeing you as being someone not typical of your generation. How do you communicate with people older than you and younger than you? Are you making a deliberate choice about how you choose to communicate with them?
I have a large range of friends, and I would say the closest friends in my life at the moment are in their 50s, and they are considerably older than me. I have a lot more in-depth conversations with them. I'm able to kind of resonate with them a lot more. I have more relatable things I can and talk about, and I struggle with, not, I don't struggle, I have fun with my friends my age, but, the worry of them is for them, how they're going to pay that £50 meal. And I'm not at that point in my life.
So you're finding it harder to relate to them.
Yes. Yeah.
And what about the
And
generations coming up? What are you seeing? Are you seeing any difference to the way they're being brought up, the way that their lives are shaping when you go to schools and things like that?
I predominantly have spoken at classes and schools where kids are massively uh, segregated is not the word. They're challenged at school because maybe they don't fit the norm, which is almost where I was as a child, because I rebelled and I wanted to do things that weren't academic, and I wanted to make money. So I speak at those kids are very driven, and I think that there's a lot, and I think there just needs to be more support out there for that generation. I think at the moment what I'm viewing is there's a lot of labels being thrown out, and it's very easy to fall on those labels as an excuse to not do anything, or I am this, I am I don't want to throw it out there, but I am X and I'm not going to do that. Whereas you might have X and everyone can do that. So.
It's the advantage in the sense of being different, that you are less likely to put labels on other people, because you know that you don't have a nice easy label or a little pigeonhole that people can put you into. Yeah. When you go to networking events and things, which I know you do periodically, how do you, because I can imagine everyone's just intrigued by you because they say, well, how do you do that? Whatever. And you get those same questions over and over again. Do you find yourself steering and wanting to look at other things and talk about other things?
Yeah, I'm definitely pivoting in where I want to be, kind of in the networking world. It's I want to for me, the questions of, how did you raise 50 grand is not something I want to talk about, because that's quite easy in the grand scheme of things. I want to know more in-depth business decisions and kind of tax implications. I want to really pivot with people that are really challenging and breaking those boundaries.
If you and I had repeated this podcast in 10 years' time, who would the Arthur Dallimer that I'm going to be speaking to then, what are they going to be saying to me?
I think I'm going to be, I think in 10 years' time, I would have had my break from this industry. I would have repositioned myself, and I think I would have then restarted the next phase of whatever I'm looking to do.
And what do you think that might
be? Which I have plans.
Oh, you have plans. You're keeping them close to your chest, are you?
Yes.
You don't want the whole world to know about that.
No.
Do you still enjoy what you're doing? Is it the fact that you're accumulating a portfolio, or is it the day-to-day you actually just love the cut and thrust of the property business?
I love the idea of what you're creating. I like the prospect and the freedom that brings, and the ability to have a life where I'm not reliant on a 9-to-5 job. What I am super excited by is to be able to actually say I'm not going to work anymore, and I'm not never going to not work, but I'm probably about 15 months away from going I'm stopping this, or be able to.
You said right at the beginning that you had the purpose. You wanted to make Swindon a better place. You want to make the environment a better place, and so on. And in a sense, that's where you do actually connect with people of your generation, because we know that Gen Zs particularly, and it all started with millennials before them, have this purpose, this drive that maybe the older generations didn't have. How does that fit into your scheme in terms of the future?
I lived in Bristol for a long time, and that's just such a vibrant place where you've got lots of kind of arts, and you've got lots of things that you can do in the evenings, and there's a lot of music, and the food cultures, it's good. Whereas you come to, say, Swindon, where I'm now living, and it's so there's not much music, there's not much food venues, and it's very easy, I feel, to be able to turn that round, but you need the people and the backing behind you to push that ahead. And I think where Swindon as a whole has been poorly led by the people that are in the town, and that being, politicians, that being the council, and that being kind of the education system behind the people that are pushing, the new generation through. I think hopefully, if you invest in the kids to be inspired and to want more, then the town can really change. And I think with the new the new leadership of the council now, I hope there's going to be a progression in the change in how people see the town. And then I hope a lot of London money comes into the place to kind of regen the area.
Quite ambitious plans to change that all around. The last thing I want to ask you, because I suddenly realise we're almost done, is, and you're probably thinking, thank goodness for that, but if you were talking to somebody else who, not necessarily like you, they're not running a business portfolio or something, but they see themselves as slightly different to somebody else of their generation, what would you say are your top tips that you would give them on how to connect with different generations to yourself, or maybe even connect with your own generation when you see there's those differences? But as an outlier, what would your tips be to get those connections?
I think communication is really key, and to not be afraid of your quirks and your, how you view life, and to not feel afraid to offend, I think is super important, because at the end of the day, we're all human, and how you choose to live your life is how you choose to live your life.
Wow, that's quite bold, because there are some people who, spend their lives, on eggshells, making sure that they don't offend, and you're just saying be a little bit more brave.
Yes, yeah.
Arthur, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. If people want to find out a little bit more about your projects, about your missions and things, where can we find you?
So start on Instagram with William Arthur Property, and then you'll be taken over to the kind of different developments that I've got going on, and my future estate here. I'm looking to open farm shops and things. So I'm looking forward to generating that
Clarkson,
brand.
Watch out, eh?
Yes.
And interestingly, you are of your generation, because the first way of getting hold of you was Instagram, not through a website or not through any other things. So maybe you have got a few traits of your generation that have snuck in there one way or another. Arthur, it's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much for chatting to us. I think you've been a real inspiration, and it's great just to talk to people who are hopefully going to move us away from looking at each other as stereotypes and realise that actually we're a lot more different than other people might think. So we're going to continue with this with future podcasts. We're going to bring on lots of other people who defy the stereotypes and will hopefully help you and us communicate more effectively between generations. You can find out more at generationallyspeaking.co.uk. In the meantime, thank you, Arthur, and thank you for joining us. Great. Bye for now. The Alastair Greener Generationally Speaking podcast was presented by me, Alastair Greener. It was recorded at Granary Studios and produced by James Jones. Please follow us and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. To find out more, visit generationallyspeaking.co.uk.